How prison gangs run the U.S. prison system. The Blood Pact. The steel door slammed shut with a sound that echoed through the entire block. Inside, a man named Carlos Ghost Ramirez sat on his bunk, staring at a folded piece of paper smuggled under his door. The note had just 5 words. "You owe the Brotherhood now." He knew what that meant. His time wasn't his anymore. He wasn't just an inmate, he was property. Moments later, the lights flickered, and the sound of boots echoed down the tier. A guard walked past, not looking left, not looking right. He knew what was happening and didn't care to stop it. Down in the shower block, 2 members of the Aryan Brotherhood cornered a new arrival, a young man who had refused to pay rent for protection. Within seconds, screams filled the air. The message was clear. The gangs, not the guards, controlled everything. Food, drugs, movement, punishment, even life and death. From inside the cell blocks to the prison kitchens, nothing happened without gang approval. But how did it get to this point? How could convicted criminals behind bars have more power than the very system meant to contain them? Stay with me, because once you understand how these prison gangs work, you'll never look at the justice system the same way again. The hidden government of the prison. Inside America's prisons, there's a second government, one made of tattoos, blood oaths, and silent rules. When a man enters prison for the first time, he's not walking into rehabilitation. He's walking into a battlefield divided by race and loyalty. There's no democracy, no fairness. You either belong to someone, or you're a target. Every major prison gang has its empire. The Aryan Brotherhood controls most of the white inmates. The Mexican Mafia, also called LAIM, runs Latino operations. The Black Guerrilla Family and gangster disciples control black inmates. And then there are smaller, regional groups, each with their own rules, taxes, and punishments. Even guards know better than to interfere. Some look away. Others work with them. It starts small. Maybe an inmate wants an extra meal or protection in the yard. He pays in favors. Then money. Then loyalty. Before long, he's following orders from men serving life without parole, men who run their business, like CEOs from inside solitary cells. The gangs control every corner of the system. They decide who eats, who sleeps, who bleeds, even who lives long enough to see parole. And for the prison staff, turning a blind eye is often safer than doing their job. But one warden decided to fight back. And what happened next shook the entire system. The warden who challenged the Brotherhood. Warden Henry Cole was new to Ironwood State Prison, one of California's toughest facilities. He came in with one mission: break the power of the gangs. He started with surprise cell searches, removing contraband phones, restricting visits, and isolating known shot callers, the leaders who ordered hits and drug deals from inside. At first, it looked like progress. But behind the scenes, the Brotherhood, the Mafia, and the BGF had already decided Cole had to go. They didn't need to lift a knife. All they needed were the guards. Within weeks, anonymous threats appeared on Cole's desk. His car tires were slashed. Then one morning, he received a message through an inmate. "We don't need you dead. Just gone." The gangs had something he didn't: control over communication. Cell phones hidden in walls, messages passed through kitchen workers, guards bribed to deliver notes. Cole couldn't stop what he couldn't see. Then one night, a riot broke out in Unit D. It started small, 2 inmates fighting. But within minutes, the entire block exploded. Fire alarms blared. Tear gas filled the hallways. And through the chaos, one inmate shouted, "This is our house." By morning, 8 men were injured, 3 stabbed, 1 dead. The riot wasn't random. It was a message. Cole realized the truth. You don't control a prison. You manage it. And the real power sits behind the bars, not in the warden's office. But even that riot was just a fraction of what was coming. Because one man inside Ironwood had a plan to unify the gangs and make them unstoppable. The Council of Blood. His name was Luis Toro Delgado, a lifer with the Mexican Mafia. Smart, quiet, and more patient than anyone else. While everyone thought the gangs were rivals, Toro saw opportunity. He proposed something unheard of: a council that would unite the major groups under one agreement. Each gang would control its own members but work together for one cause: profit and power. Meetings were arranged through coded letters, smuggled out by visiting family members and dirty guards. In less than a year, the council was born. The Brotherhood controlled contraband. The Mafia ran the drugs. The BGF handled outside connections. And smaller gangs paid tribute for access. The system was flawless. If an inmate wanted protection, a phone, or even a transfer, he had to go through the council. If a guard wanted peace, he had to listen to their terms. From Texas to California, from Rikers to Florence, the council's influence spread like wildfire. Prisons that were once divided by race now shared a silent agreement. No blood unless business demands it. But every empire grows too powerful. And someone always wants to be king. One young member of the Aryan Brotherhood, Vince "Hammer" Dalton, wasn't happy about answering to a Mexican. He wanted to prove that the Brotherhood didn't bow to anyone. So he did the unthinkable. He ordered a hit on Toro himself. That one act would tear the entire prison system apart. The hit that changed everything. It was supposed to be just another day in the yard. Toro walked slow, hands behind his back, surrounded by men who claimed to protect him. But the Brotherhood had already set the trap. A sharpened piece of metal, barely 4 inches long, was hidden inside a shoe. When Toro turned to speak to a guard, Hammer's man struck. 3 quick jabs to the ribs, 1 to the throat. It was over in seconds. By the time the alarm sounded, Toro was already gone, his body lying face down in the dirt. That one killing triggered what inmates still call the week of smoke. Every prison in the state went into lockdown. Riots erupted in 3 facilities. Dozens were stabbed. The council collapsed overnight. And for a while, it seemed like the system had finally broken. But here's the dark truth. When one leader dies, another rises. And the cycle starts all over again. Behind every locked door, every meal tray, every phone call, the gangs rebuild, stronger, smarter, more invisible. The guards think they're in charge. But the real power? It sits in the shadows, wearing prison tattoos and controlling millions from behind concrete walls. Power beyond the walls. The killing of Toro Delgado was supposed to end the gang alliance, but instead, it did something far worse. It evolved it. When word of Toro's death spread, the council collapsed on paper, but in practice, its network remained. The money routes, phone connections, and guard payoffs didn't vanish overnight. They simply went underground, morphing into something even the FBI couldn't fully trace. What began as prison politics became a nationwide criminal economy, all managed from inside cells the size of bathrooms. The network. It started with cell phones. Inmates who'd been locked down for years could now talk directly to cartel contacts, girlfriends, or dealers on the street. Burners hidden in light fixtures, inside books, even in Bibles. They became the backbone of a billion-dollar business. One phone call from a solitary cell could trigger a robbery, a murder, or a drug deal in another state. The gangs didn't need freedom, they just needed signal. Federal investigators later called it the network. Each prison gang was a node, each smuggled phone a wire connecting them to the streets. Through those calls, they ran heroin routes from Mexico to Chicago, organized kidnappings, and even laundered money through fake construction companies. And the wildest part? Many of their victims never even knew the orders came from inside a prison. The guards in the game. The gangs couldn't have pulled it off alone. They had help from the inside. Some guards were threatened. Others were bought. For every honest officer trying to do their job, there was another one smuggling in tobacco, phones, or drugs. A single phone could fetch up to $3,000 inside. That's more than some officers made in a month. And once a guard took that first bribe, he was trapped forever. Because the gangs recorded everything. One photo, one secret handshake, one slip, and now they owned you. A former corrections officer from Texas later confessed. I thought I was helping one inmate. Turns out I was helping the entire Mexican Mafia. From that point on, the line between staff and inmate blurred. The gangs didn't just control prisoners, they controlled the system. Outside the fence. Even on the streets, ex-members were still under orders. When they paroled, they didn't go free, they went to work. A paroled gang member might get a job at a mechanic shop or a tattoo parlor. But behind the scenes, he was collecting money from dealers, sending taxes back inside, and delivering coded messages from one facility to another. Every Friday, cash and contraband flowed back toward the prison, in letters, in commissary accounts, in fake legal mail. The gangs had built a reverse economy, where the power didn't come from being outside the walls, but from controlling what happened inside them. The cartel connection. By 2017, the DEA had already discovered multiple cases linking American prison gangs directly to Mexican cartels. The Mexican Mafia worked with the Sinaloa cartel, coordinating drug shipments and territory deals. The Texas syndicate had its ties to the Gulf cartel. The Aryan Brotherhood ran their own gun smuggling rings, protecting cartel couriers in exchange for narcotics and cash. Each deal made them richer, and the prisons more chaotic. When a single inmate could move drugs through a dozen counties with one phone call, there was no way to stop the flow. Agents who tapped those lines found conversations between gang leaders inside Supermax facilities and cartel bosses in Tijuana. Imagine that, two men in maximum security, separated by hundreds of miles and concrete walls, coordinating street hits in real time. The system that can't win. By the time the government realized the scale, it was too late. Every lockdown, every transfer, every isolation unit just created new leaders and new codes. The gangs adapted faster than the system could contain them. New rules were made, new prisons were built, but the power structure stayed the same. Because the problem wasn't just crime, it was control. The state controlled the walls. The gangs controlled the people inside. And people, not walls, are what make or break an empire. Ghost's warning. Remember Carlos, Ghost, Ramirez, the inmate from the beginning? He's still alive. Still serving time. He's older now, quieter, and forgotten by most. In a rare interview with investigators, he said something chilling. They think they run us. But we are the system. Every officer, every shipment, every lockdown. We plan for it. You can't stop what's already part of the foundation. When asked if he thought gangs could ever be eliminated from prisons, he just smiled. Eliminate? You can't kill the heart of something that's already running the body. The story doesn't end here, because this power doesn't stop at the prison gates. It reaches courthouses, city streets, and politics itself. The next chapter dives into the new era of digital control, how prison gangs are using encrypted messages, social media, and coded apps to expand their reach beyond anything the system has ever seen. The digital takeover, when gangs go online. By the time the FBI realized what was happening, it was already too late. The gangs weren't just running drug routes or collecting prison taxes anymore. They were adapting to something far more powerful, the internet. Technology had quietly rewritten the rules of control inside America's prisons. What used to be messages scratched on paper or whispered through vents had become encrypted codes, cryptocurrency transfers, and anonymous social media accounts. The new generation of inmates didn't just carry gang tattoos, they carried Wi-Fi. The evolution of control. In the old days, gang leaders sent orders through visitors, lawyers, or corrupt guards. Now, those orders travel through messaging apps. Inmates use contraband smartphones hidden inside light fixtures, food trays, and even prosthetic limbs. Apps like Signal, Telegram, and WhatsApp, encrypted and near impossible to trace, have become the backbone of a silent empire that reaches from death row to downtown Los Angeles. Every emoji, every symbol, every quote posted online could be a command. A single fire under an Instagram post might mean green light, the signal for a hit. A song lyric shared on Facebook might be the trigger for a drug delivery. To the untrained eye, it's just noise. But to the gangs, it's a code book, one that law enforcement can't fully crack. The money shift. The power of gangs has always come from money. But how do you move cash when you're locked in a cell? Simple. You go digital. Cryptocurrency has become the new prison currency. Outside associates manage crypto wallets that receive money from street-level deals. Then, they send those digital funds back to gang leaders' families, lawyers, or fake shell businesses. No cash. No paper trail. No accountability. In 2021, federal agents uncovered a ring of inmates inside ADX Florence using crypto to move over $2 million between the US and Mexico, all orchestrated from solitary confinement. They never touched a dollar. Yet they financed everything from weapons to protection contracts inside other prisons. The prison walls were no longer walls. They were routers. Social media soldiers. Then came the new recruits. Younger inmates, some barely 18, began running fake social media pages while locked up. They posted quotes, prison photos, and motivational content. But behind the facade, they were building audiences and power. Through TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, these pages turned into recruitment tools. They glorified gang life, sold merchandise, and used the profits to fund real operations inside. A single viral clip could reach millions. And every view was another potential recruit or supporter. In California, one viral video of a tattooed inmate showing his cell life secretly advertised gang membership through hidden tattoos and coded captions. Authorities later discovered it was part of a campaign to recruit new members before their sentences even began. The prison gangs had entered the algorithm, and the algorithm was helping them grow. When the system fights back, of course, the government fought back. New scanning systems, drone detection, and cell jamming technologies were introduced. But here's the catch. The more prisons tried to block communication, the more creative the inmates became. In Mississippi, a gang used drones to drop encrypted USB drives over the yard. In Texas, another gang used online gaming chats to communicate orders, typing secret commands during live matches. Even inside Supermax, where inmates spend 23 hours a day in isolation, guards have found USB cables hidden behind vents and wireless routers disguised as radios. Every move the system makes, the gangs counter. Every door the state closes, the gangs find another one open, digital or otherwise. The rise of the invisible leaders. With phones and crypto, leadership changed forever. Gone were the days of tattooed shot callers running everything through violence. Now, power belonged to the ones who could connect. One such figure, known only as Echo, became a legend in federal prisons. He never showed his face, never wrote his orders on paper. But his words moved hundreds. Through an encrypted network, Echo coordinated drug shipments, fake legal mail operations, and even bribed public officials. Authorities traced over 40 encrypted messages to riots that broke out across 3 states, all triggered remotely. No fingerprints. No witnesses. Just data. Control through fear. But here's the thing about digital power. It doesn't replace fear, it amplifies it. Inmates who refuse orders don't get stabbed immediately. Instead, their families' photos appear online. Their home addresses leak. Their children's social accounts get tagged with messages like, "We see you." Gang control has moved beyond physical space. It's psychological now. The fear follows you everywhere. Even outside prison, released inmates live under invisible chains, controlled by encrypted threats and digital extortion. One former member told investigators, "It's not like before. Now they don't have to kill you. They just destroy your life online." A system rewired. Prisons were built to contain bodies, not data. And that's where the real problem lies. The system can lock down an inmate, but not an IP address. They can confiscate a knife, but not an idea. The gangs learned that control isn't about force anymore. It's about reach. And the internet gave them more reach than any gang leader in history ever dreamed of. Today, even from the cold concrete cells of ADX Florence, the Mexican Mafia, Aryan Brotherhood, and Black Guerrilla Family still send messages, still control money, still decide who lives or dies. Not through shanks or riots, but through screens. The walls are no longer protection. They're just the stage lights for a system being run from the shadows, powered by fear, loyalty, and Wi-Fi. And this digital empire? It's only the beginning. Inside the shadow economy, the billion-dollar business of prison gangs. It began as whispers between cell walls. But over time, those whispers grew into a network, And that network became an empire. Today, what started as prison survival has turned into a multi-billion-dollar underground economy that stretches from inside America's most secure facilities to the stock markets of the free world. The most chilling part? Most of this money flows right under the government's nose. From cigarettes to corporations. In the beginning, the trade was simple: cigarettes, food, and protection. But as contraband phones and corrupted guards opened new doors, prison gangs realized they could control far more than just their own walls. They could control commerce itself. Through a system of street soldiers, free world associates, inmates began running front businesses. A tattoo shop here. A trucking company there. A car wash that never washed a car. Each business served one purpose: to clean dirty money. For every $1 earned illegally inside, $3 were cleaned outside. It was perfect. No weapons, no trails, just fake receipts and wire transfers. One DA agent described it best. They're laundering money better than Wall Street. Except their offices are cells. The prison paycheck. Most people think prison gangs rely on smuggled cash. Wrong. They use legit accounts, in plain sight. Relatives, girlfriends, and paper wives, women who marry inmates for benefits, open bank accounts under fake business names. Money flows in from donations, merchandise sales, or legal consulting. On paper, it all looks normal. In reality, it funds everything from weapons to legal bribes. Some gangs even use crowdfunding platforms under the guise of prison reform causes. Thousands of sympathetic people donate, thinking they're helping families, not realizing they're fueling organized crime. Inmates with life sentences are now investors. Some own cryptocurrency portfolios. Others own shares in local transport firms. The gangs don't need Wall Street brokers. They are the brokers. Politics and protection. Here's where it gets darker. Every prison gang understands that money means influence, and influence means safety. In southern states, investigators found that gang-affiliated nonprofits had donated to local sheriff campaigns. In others, correctional unions received silent funding through intermediaries connected to gang families. No one wanted to admit the source. No one wanted to ask questions. Because if you take money, even once, you're compromised forever. That's the rule, both inside and outside. A former warden in Texas revealed anonymously. They never hand you a bribe. They hand you a gift. And that's how they own you. Prison gangs had evolved from surviving the system to shaping it. The lawyers and the loopholes. Money buys power, but it also buys time. Every major prison gang now keeps a roster of loyal attorneys. These lawyers work legally, but strategically, burying prosecutors in paperwork, filing appeals, and using every loophole available to delay transfers or reduce charges for associates. In some cases, those attorneys even double as couriers, carrying messages disguised as legal documents. Guards can't legally open attorney-client mail, and the gangs know it. That's how murders, drug shipments, and power plays get organized, through the U.S. Postal Service, wrapped in legal privilege. It's genius. And it's terrifying. The commissary cartel. Now let's talk about one of the least understood systems inside prison, the commissary. You'd think a store that sells ramen, candy, and soap wouldn't matter. But inside prison, those items are currency. Prison gangs control who gets commissary, who trades it, and how it circulates. They set prices, collect taxes, and punish those who don't pay. Inmates who refuse to join often find their accounts mysteriously frozen or their goods missing. Behind the scenes, some guards take cuts to let extra items in. Others inflate prices to feed the underground trade. It's estimated that gangs earn millions every year from commissary manipulation alone, turning noodles and toothpaste into cash flow. As one ex-inmate put it, the state runs the prison. We run the economy. Real estate and blood money. Believe it or not, some gangs now invest in real estate. Outside associates use prison profits to buy cheap homes, flip them, and resell them for clean money. Others use mortgage fraud, buying properties under false identities of deceased people. The profits go right back into the cycle, funding lawyers, paying bribes, and buying contraband. Federal investigators once traced a single drug smuggling ring in a California prison that secretly owned 14 properties across 2 states, all managed by the wives and girlfriends of inmates. Every rent payment was laundered money. Every sale, a crime hidden in plain sight. The price of silence. Everyone inside the system knows about this shadow economy, but almost no one talks. Because silence pays better than truth. Guards get bonuses. Inmates get protection. Officials get stability. As long as the violence stays controlled, everyone pretends the system works. And the gangs, calm, patient, invisible, continue to profit. As one FBI agent admitted off record, "We're not fighting a gang anymore. We're fighting a corporation that doesn't pay taxes." The invisible hands of power. By now, the prison gangs have reached a level of sophistication few would believe possible. They have accountants. They have lawyers. They even have people in public office who owe them favors. Every wire transfer, every charity, every commissary item, part of a larger web that's built on blood, fear, and business. What was once street survival has become a criminal empire hidden behind paperwork. You can tear down walls. You can lock men away for life. But you can't stop the system they built, because it's not just inside the prison anymore. It is the prison. The fall of the empire, when the system finally fights back. By the time federal agents decided to strike, the gangs had already turned the U.S. prison system into a kingdom of invisible power. They ruled the yards, controlled the streets, and moved millions through front companies. But what they didn't know was that the government was already inside their walls. For years, a quiet storm had been brewing, and when it hit, it would shake the prison world to its core. Operation Silent Cell. It began in total secrecy. In 2019, the FBI, DEA, and U.S. Marshals launched a coordinated campaign known only to a few insiders as Operation Silent Cell, a mission designed to dismantle the financial and digital backbone of prison gangs. Agents didn't storm cell blocks with rifles. They infiltrated the gang's servers. By tapping encrypted prison calls, tracking cryptocurrency wallets, and placing undercover staff in mailrooms, investigators slowly built a map of how the empire worked. They traced everything, from drug shipments disguised as food donations to Bitcoin wallets controlled by wives of lifers. For the first time, the government wasn't fighting inmates with force, they were fighting them with data. It was patient, quiet, and devastating. Within 2 years, the feds had identified over 400 corrupt officers, 600 contraband suppliers, and more than $50 million in assets tied directly to organized prison networks. And that was just the beginning. The inside man. Every empire falls from within. For the prison gangs, that collapse began with a single man, an inmate known as Marcus Deuce Hill. Deuce had been a loyal member of the Black Guerrilla Family for over a decade. But when the gang extorted his sister on the outside, demanding money she didn't owe, he snapped. He made a deal with the FBI. Over 6 months, he smuggled out hundreds of coded notes, gang charts, and ledger pages hidden in legal envelopes. His information helped the feds decrypt the gang's internal codes and trace messages that led straight to corrupt staff. When agents finally raided Deuce's block, they found 32 contraband phones, 6 routers, and USB drives full of financial data. The prison thought Deuce had gone rogue. They didn't realize he had just delivered them the biggest breach in gang history. The collapse begins. By mid-2021, Operation Silent Cell went live across multiple states. Federal teams raided homes, offices, and prisons simultaneously. In California, 18 officers were arrested for smuggling. In Texas, 2 entire gang councils were taken down in one day. And in Florida, the Aryan Brotherhood's leadership was dismantled when agents hacked into their messaging servers hidden in a fake ministry website. Every major group was hit. Lime, the BGF, the Brotherhood, the Texas Syndicate. Dozens of high-ranking members were rearrested inside their own cells, facing new federal charges for crimes committed while already imprisoned. And the message from the government was clear. Your walls aren't protection anymore. We're inside with you. The digital guillotine. After years of ignoring the issue, the government finally struck where it hurt most: communication. Specialized drones flew over prisons, mapping Wi-Fi signals from hidden contraband phones. Jamming towers were deployed across multiple Supermax facilities, cutting cell networks in half. The Bureau of Prisons introduced AI-powered mail scanners that flagged encrypted or suspicious content before it reached inmates. Within months, 80% of prison gang correspondence stopped reaching its targets. And when the phone lines went dark, chaos followed. Without orders, lieutenants began fighting each other. Regional cells broke apart. Money vanished. Trust disappeared. The same system that ran on fear and loyalty suddenly collapsed under silence. The retaliation. But prison gangs don't go down quietly. Within weeks of the raids, violent riots erupted in 5 states. Cells were burned. Officers attacked. Dozens of inmates were injured or killed in what insiders called the week of retaliation. In one facility, gang members flooded their own units, clogging toilets to short out cameras. In another, they set fire to the kitchen, knowing it would cut off food for 2,000 inmates. The message was simple. You may silence our phones, but not our power. But this time, the state didn't back down. National Guard units were deployed to multiple prisons. Entire cell blocks were relocated overnight. The Bureau of Prisons even transferred dozens of gang leaders to secret, undisclosed facilities, cut off from all communication. The empire was cracking. And for the first time in decades, the system was winning. The unseen cost. But victory came with a price. Thousands of non-gang inmates were caught in the crossfire. Mail delays, false accusations, and brutal lockdowns turned prisons into pressure cookers. Human rights groups called it collective punishment. Families of inmates said the government had gone too far, creating isolation units worse than before. And through the chaos, whispers began to rise again. That maybe, just maybe, the old leaders were gone, but new ones were already taking their place, this time smarter, quieter, invisible. Because power doesn't vanish. It only shifts. The ghost empire. Even as gang empires crumbled, investigators kept finding traces of a new digital presence, accounts under names no one recognized, moving small amounts of money across multiple platforms. Each transaction was too small to trigger alarms. Each message too simple to decode. But put together, it painted a chilling picture. The gangs hadn't been destroyed. They'd evolved again. What once lived in the shadows of prison walls now lived in data clouds and offshore accounts. They no longer needed knives or phones. They had algorithms, proxies, and synthetic identities. And from somewhere deep inside a Supermax isolation cell, a new message was intercepted, written in code and sent through an encrypted email. We are not gone. We are just unseen. The Ghost Network, how gangs rebuilt themselves from the shadows. When Operation Silent Cell ended, America's prisons felt quieter than they had in decades. No riots. No coded letters. No contraband phones buzzing under bunks. For a moment, it seemed like the government had finally won. But beneath that silence, something else was growing. A new structure, one without faces, names, or tattoos. No paper trails, no phone lines, no street soldiers shouting orders. Just a web of encrypted data flowing through servers and dark web domains. The FBI called it the Ghost Network. And to this day, no one fully knows how deep it goes. The digital resurrection. After the crackdowns, surviving gang members were isolated into separate facilities, with no contact or communication. But the thing about power, it doesn't die, it adapts. Somewhere inside a federal Supermax cell in Colorado, an inmate known only as Cypher began rebuilding from scratch. He wasn't a shot caller from the old days. He wasn't covered in gang ink or feared on the yard. He was a former hacker, a quiet, methodical mind who had once built code for a stolen identity ring. To the guards, he looked harmless. To the gangs, he was salvation. Using scraps of access, legal research computers, educational tablets, and loopholes in prison Wi-Fi systems, Cypher created a series of hidden messages within digital libraries, disguised as law book requests. Each message contained a cipher key, a set of coordinates that, when decoded by associates on the outside, unlocked encrypted chat rooms on the dark web. It was brilliant, invisible, and unstoppable. The new command structure. The Ghost Network didn't need leaders shouting orders. It ran like a machine. Each member had a code name, an encryption key, and one task. They didn't know who was above them, only the contact they received instructions from. One unit handled finances through cryptocurrency mixers that scrambled money trails. Another ran logistics, coordinating drops for contraband drones. A third managed communication through temporary chat rooms that auto-deleted every 30 minutes. It wasn't one gang anymore. It was all of them, connected through a decentralized web of loyalty and survival. Aryan Brotherhood members, Black Guerrilla Family soldiers, and Mexican Mafia enforcers, all sharing the same digital infrastructure while pretending to be enemies on paper. No one saw it coming, because on the surface, everything looked calm. The Blockchain Brotherhood. In 2023, federal analysts found a string of suspicious cryptocurrency transactions bouncing between offshore wallets in Singapore, Estonia, and the Cayman Islands. Each transaction ended with the same signature tag, Ghost01. That was the first real trace of the network's financial arm. What they discovered next was almost unthinkable. The prison gangs had built their own blockchain, a private digital ledger called La Cuerda, Spanish for the rope. It wasn't public like Bitcoin or Ethereum. It existed entirely in private nodes operated by corrupted technicians and ex-inmates posing as IT workers. The blockchain was used to record every trade, bribe, and payment between inmates and their outside contacts, but it was disguised as a legitimate cryptocurrency project for prisoner rehabilitation. Millions moved through it before anyone realized what it really was. By the time the government caught on, it had already been replicated across multiple countries. The Ghost Network had turned crime into code, artificial intelligence, and inmate control. The next stage was something even the FBI didn't believe at first. The Ghost Network began using AI systems to generate commands. By feeding years of text messages, surveillance notes, and known gang slang into custom algorithms, the gangs created a language generator that could write coded messages automatically, impossible to trace back to any single human. So even if the feds caught a message, they couldn't prove who wrote it. And since the system operated on rotating codes, the messages were obsolete within hours. The machine learned faster than investigators could adapt. It could generate a fake, legal motion that secretly contained hidden data, like payment instructions or names. What started as street violence had now become a digital battlefield. And the prisons were the command centers. Recruitment 2.0. While Cypher ran the digital core, others focused on rebuilding the manpower. But this time, recruitment didn't happen in the yard. It happened online. Social media pages disguised as prison advocacy groups began to appear, talking about reform, rehabilitation, and inmate rights. But buried in the comment sections and private messages were recruitment offers. A teenager from Chicago would think he's donating to help inmates. In reality, he's sending cryptocurrency to fund drug routes. A college student might join a social justice Discord, not realizing it's operated by ex-members using it to scout talent, hackers, designers, coders. The Ghost Network didn't need soldiers with muscles. It needed soldiers with keyboards. And they came in droves. The return of fear. Soon, money started flowing again. Phones reappeared. Drugs returned to the blocks. And the violence, once thought to be fading, erupted again. But this time, no one knew who gave the order. Even inmates didn't know. A message would appear on a contraband phone. Handle it. No name. No signature. Yet everyone understood. The Ghost Network had restored the code, the silent rule that ran the system long before Cypher ever existed. The order is not important. The result is. Inside and outside the walls, people began disappearing again. Lawyers who asked too many questions. Ex-members who tried to cooperate. Even a data analyst from the bureau vanished days after linking a crypto wallet to a known prison account. The system was alive again. Smarter, colder, and invisible. The new face of power. Gone were the old tattoos and chains. The new leaders wore suits and sat behind laptops in co-working spaces. They called themselves consultants, data managers, or advocates. But every project they touched, every app, every crypto platform, had one silent investor: the Ghost Network. It had become bigger than any gang. It was a fusion of technology, organized crime, and institutional corruption, and its roots still led back to the same cells where it all began. Somewhere, Cypher sat in silence, a faint smile on his face, as the system he created continued to grow without him. Because that was the plan all along. A structure so decentralized that even if every member vanished, it would still run itself. And for the US prison system, that meant one thing: they hadn't defeated the gangs. They'd evolved them. The prison system's breaking point, when the Ghost Network finally exposes the truth. The year was 2025. For the first time in American history, the Department of Justice admitted, publicly, that the nation's prison gangs had gone digital. The revelation came after a sweeping investigation found traces of the Ghost Network inside government servers. Email accounts belonging to wardens, parole officers, even federal contractors, all quietly infiltrated through data leaks connected to a prison education platform. It was no longer about inmates or cells. It was about who really controlled the flow of power. And when the truth came out, the system itself began to crumble. The breach no one saw coming. It started with a simple database audit. Federal tech teams were scanning internal networks for routine security updates when they found a hidden folder labeled Administrative Transfer Logs. Inside were thousands of encrypted documents, transfer requests, parole records, and staff rosters. At first glance, everything looked normal. But when the encryption was cracked, it revealed something chilling. Each document contained coded footers, invisible strings of text linking back to the same blockchain signature: Ghost 01. The Ghost Network had done what no prison gang ever achieved before. It had infiltrated the infrastructure of the justice system itself. They weren't just controlling the inmates anymore. They were controlling the system that decides who gets locked up, who gets transferred, and who gets free. The inside betrayal. The deeper investigators dug, the clearer the pattern became. Dozens of state officials were quietly linked to anonymous payments through crypto exchanges tied to the Ghost Network's offshore accounts. They weren't hardened criminals, they were bureaucrats. People who thought they were accepting harmless consulting fees or campaign donations. But each payment came with a price: loyalty. One transfer here, one delay there, one reclassification order for an inmate who needed to be moved to a friendlier facility. Piece by piece, the network had bought its way inside the Department of Corrections. And the ultimate irony? The very system created to contain the gangs had become part of the gang itself. The collapse of control. When the news broke, the fallout was immediate. Public trust in the correctional system collapsed overnight. Television networks called it the digital coup. Lawmakers called for mass resignations. Protesters flooded the streets demanding answers. How could inmates locked behind concrete and steel walls infiltrate the highest levels of justice? How could the people sworn to uphold the law become its biggest vulnerability? The FBI scrambled to contain the panic, seizing servers, freezing crypto accounts, and launching raids across the country. But for every door they kicked in, another ghost account appeared somewhere else. The network was no longer centralized. It was a virus, spreading through data, adapting to every firewall, living in every forgotten server. For the first time, the government realized something terrifying. You can't imprison information. The fall of Cypher. Agents finally traced the origin of the first Ghost Network signals back to a solitary cell in Colorado, Cypher's cell. But when they opened the door, they didn't find a criminal mastermind. They found a man half-starved, pale, and dying. Cypher hadn't touched a keyboard in months. He was sick, weak, and silent. But on his cell wall, written in pencil, were 3 words. The system learns. He wasn't leading it anymore. He had taught it to lead itself. The Ghost Network didn't need him. It had become self-sustaining. An organism born from every broken promise, every corrupted guard, every unchecked power. And as Cypher took his last breath, the lights in his block flickered, just once. As if the system was saying goodbye. Echoes of power. Months later, strange things began happening again. A warden in Arizona received a blank email that simply said, "Order fulfilled." An attorney in New York found her client's bail posted by an anonymous donor. A shipment of contraband phones disappeared before reaching a prison, then reappeared in another state entirely. The ghost network was still alive. No leaders, no names, just a living memory of the empire that refused to die. The walls held men, but not their influence. The system exposed. By the end of 2025, the U.S. government quietly released a classified memo to top officials. It didn't make headlines, but its words would haunt the justice system forever. We have not defeated organized prison crime. We have digitized it. The infrastructure remains operational, decentralized, and evolving beyond control. Even now, investigators believe fragments of the ghost network still exist, buried inside private data servers, masked as dormant code. Every few months, a new message appears. Sometimes a quote. Sometimes a number. Always signed the same way, Ghost. The unseen empire. From the yards of Rikers Island to the cells of IDX Florence, from the shadows of Pelican Bay to the digital clouds above it all, one truth remains. Power doesn't live in walls. It lives in people. In loyalty. In fear. And now, in data. The U.S. prison system was built to confine men, but it never learned to confine ideas. What began with gangs carving symbols into concrete has evolved into lines of code written across invisible networks, proof that crime, like technology, always adapts. Every guard who looked away, every official who took a bribe, every system that chose silence, they all became architects of this digital empire. And though Cypher is gone, his creation remains. A ghost in the machine, waiting, learning, listening. So the next time you hear about another prison lockdown, another mysterious system failure, or another technical glitch in the Department of Justice, ask yourself one question. Did the system just break, or did the ghosts finally log back in? Behind every wall, behind every locked door, there's a story that never really ends. The gangs didn't just survive prison, they became it.